And wasn't that another fantastic conversation? Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Murphy here from CNBC again, and thank you so much for joining us for your next session. Please make him feel welcome, His Royal Highness Prince Faisal Al Saud, Chairman of the Saudi Esports Federation.
Hello. Thank you very much.
So your next conversation is about esports in the kingdom and globally. And Your Royal Highness, we are so thrilled that you are joining us. So thank you so much again for being here. Just looking at the numbers here, worldwide revenue generated from esports is expected to reach $1.86 billion by 2025. That is next year. So how are you developing the ecosystem and capitalizing on this growth in the kingdom?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here at FII, as it always is. A little intimidating in front of all these great companies and CEOs, but I hope we can keep this a little interesting. What we're doing in Saudi, we're trying to look at the whole ecosystem. Rather than focusing on one issue or one part of the ecosystem, we are looking at things holistically. We are trying to build an industry where we have no baggage, learn from what's happening out there in the global industry, and rather than recreating the wheel, start from a level playing field and build from there together as part of a global industry. We have a number of initiatives, whether you have Savvy, which is a PIF company, which is leading our investments. We have a fund with the National Development Fund to fund startups and really build that grassroots growth. We have the Federation, which is really building the professional players, the local tournaments, and the participation in international tournaments. But I think the most important part of what we're doing is what we're doing with launching a gaming and esports authority and housing within that the national strategy for gaming and esports, which allows us to do three things. One, facilitate a conversation between public and private sector to make sure that as regulation is growing and needs to come in as it needs to, it is there for business growth and not in hindering what business growth we need to do here. Two, setting a set of KPIs to make sure that as we get to our goal of becoming a global hub for gaming and esports, that we are keeping to a roadmap, that we understand that there is not just an end goal, but there is steps along the way, and how do we keep along those steps? And three, it gives us a place to make sure that as we move forward, we're moving forward as Team Saudi. Anything we do in gaming, it's not Giddiya or Federation or Savvy or PIF or different entities. It is Team Saudi. And as long as we can keep those three things within that umbrella, which is led by His Highness the Crown Prince, Prince Mohammed, we have a pathway to really create a global hub, which, and people always ask me, what do you mean by global hub? For me, it's very simple. Everyone, when you think about gaming and esports, there are certain places that come to the top of your mind. Japan, South Korea, United States, Canada, some places in Europe. We want Saudi Arabia to be a natural part of that conversation. And when you think about working in this industry, when you think about a career path in this industry, you think about coming to Saudi as much as you think about going to any of those other countries.
And there's so much investment and development happening in this space, but I also think it's fair to say, and I'm sure some of our audience would probably agree, maybe esports isn't necessarily mainstream just yet. So when are we going to see esports become mainstream?
Well, if I may, I know we've seen a lot of interaction with the AI with the panelists. I'd like to reverse that a little bit, if I may. When we talk about mainstream sports, what are three of the main or biggest sports viewership-wise? You talk about the NFL in the US, you talk about the World Cup globally, and you talk about the Olympics. We measure esports in hours watched. So if I may ask the AI, in hours watched, what was the numbers last year for the NFL, the Olympics, or the most recent Olympics, and the World Cup, if possible?
Your Royal Highness, that is an interesting question. I believe the NFL had 100 million viewers with 1.75 billion hours watched in 2023. FIFA 2022 saw 1.5 billion hours watched in 2022, and the 2024 Olympics is currently believed to have had around 50 million hours watch time.
So, I mean, when we talk about hours watched, you're talking about over 100 million hours in the NFL. You're talking about 50 million in the Olympics. When you talk about our recent event here in the Esports World Cup, we had 111 million hours watched, not including China. If you include China, that's adding another 140 million hours watched to reach 250 million hours. So when you talk about a global audience, esports is mainstream. If you look at the next generation, the young men and women that are growing up in this world, that are growing up in a world where they've known esports from birth, unlike us dinosaurs. They've been playing games. They've been participating in esports as a viewer or as a player, as a professional, as a coach, as a part of the industry since they were young. This is mainstream to them. This is the mainstream sport of the future. And as we look forward, and you look forward to the Olympic esports games and the innovations there, all of these traditional sports and these now esports are starting to get more and more close together in spirit, in viewership, in participation, but also in values. And that's where I think when you talk about the future of esports is just growing and it is bright. I mean, you said some of the numbers about income from esports, and that's just a small subset of gaming. Gaming revenues are bigger than film, TV, and music combined. And so the growth potential is huge. The youth engagement is huge. And now if we can bring those values in the traditional sports from the traditional Olympic sports into esports and really for that growth in the future, I think you'll see that grow markedly in the near future.
Your Royal Highness, I've crunched the numbers for you because you mentioned them. Gaming revenues in MENA alone worth $7.2 billion last year. And the number of gamers in the region, as you say, now projected to grow to around 87 million by 2026. Those numbers according to PwC. So what we're seeing here is a really exciting and investable market. So what are you doing to attract local and international investment into the esports space?
Well, that's really two facets. One is we are investing ourselves. By showcasing the PIF is willing to invest, the NDF is willing to invest in startups, that gets the private sector here investing and looking into this as an industry, which is a showcase for the profits that can be made, the investment that can be made, and the profits that can be generated from this. And two is information. There's a lot of information that is just simply not out there, not commonplace yet. I mean, you talk about that in our smaller region. When you talk about the MENA region as a whole, you're talking about roughly 250 million gamers out of 50 million people in the MENA region that all speak one language. So when we talk to people, you talk about the growth in gaming in North America, in South America, in Europe, in China, in Japan. And a lot of those, the localization aspects have been done. There is a lot of growth we've seen there. What we're talking to people, the conversation, the information we're giving people is, there is an opportunity to come here and from Saudi, localize in local Arabic content, localize in local Arabic culture, and through that see access to that 250 million gamers and that growth that you can get associated with that. We are a young community, we are a strong gaming community, and we are highly liquid. But we haven't been catered to yet. But that is changing. You're seeing a lot of games with Arabic storylines, Arabic history in them, things like Assassin's Creed, among many others. Now you're seeing people start to bring in Arabic content. Fortnite did it. They did a number of concerts which were very popular. They did some in Arabic. And when they put the Arabic music from those Arabic concerts onto the radio stations that you can play in the cars, the uptick they saw in viewers and players from the region took a huge uptick. So the data is there. Now it's just making sure that people understand and see that data. And if they don't believe it, they can come and test for themselves. And we welcome that opportunity, and we are open to those opportunities.
I think it's fascinating as well because this industry is, of course, so enabled by technology. And I know everyone in the room listening to the conversations today has probably heard a lot of buzzwords like artificial intelligence, for example, virtual reality, augmented reality. These aren't buzzwords in your arena, though. So tell me how you're incorporating some of these technologies into events and training programs, for example, and how do you push this forward in terms of growth using technology?
Well, I mean, technology is at the center of everything we do. In fact, I was having a conversation with people in the industry about an interesting change that I've seen recently. If you look, I mean, people have been playing games from the beginning of history. Digital gaming is the new version of gaming. But when you also look at the history of innovation in the world, especially technological innovation, a lot of that has come, quite frankly, from the defense industry. Innovation is done there, and then that filters down to other things. When you look at computers, you look at AI, you look at the internet, a lot of that came from military spending, military research. But if you look at the industry as we are now, computing and a lot of these other things, and you look at the effect gaming has on that, as big as the gaming industry is, the profits that you get from it, the innovation you're seeing in content, in gaming, the computers themselves, the hardware, the way they have to innovate every year to be able to accommodate gaming rather than military use. You look at other industries, real estate, even the military, what they use as an engine for the creation of buildings, for the creation of defense equipment, is all a gaming engine. It's not a military engine. When you look at the way they plan for large events, how do they know how people are going to come in and out of the stadium? How do they map all of that out? That's a gaming engine. It's not a military engine. So gaming now is becoming a leader in innovation because that is what the youth are interested in. That is where they're spending their time. That is where they're spending their viewership. And when you talk about how do you innovate, how do you start to move that forward, AI is a huge part of that, not just in the storytelling and the game creation, but in the training. I, as a professional, if I'm at the top of my game, I need to be able to practice against someone that is equal to me. So the young men and women at the top of their game in esports can't always find that. AI is giving them that. If you want to train the next generation, you want them to see how are they playing against the best? How do they compare to the best? You can't always play against the best, but you can recreate that in AI to train the next generation. We use that in a lot of what we're doing in our Saudi Esports Academy. But also you look at what we're doing with the Olympics. The Olympic Esports Games are going to have 3 different categories. You're going to have your esports, which is necessary. You're going to have your simulation sports, things like NBA 2K, EAFC, which are simulated versions, digital versions of a real sport. But you're also going to have your digital sports. So that's your cycling, your rowing, your virtual taekwondo, virtual sports, which is a physical sport. You are physically doing the sport, but you're doing it in a digital world, which is, artificial intelligence that's not just virtual reality, but mixed reality. And so the technology in there is getting better. It has to compete. It has to get better because you're going to be doing that not just on a global stage, but on an Olympic stage. That is going to be a focal point for young men and women for generations to come and inspiring generations for the years to come. And so all of that is a part of not just who we are, but a part of the future. And hopefully that'll translate to other industries and other sports.
And just speaking of other industries, we look at the development of this industry moving in many, many directions, but one of them is event and talent management, for example, international partnerships, broadcasting, et cetera, and. What is the next big development to watch that's going to elevate Saudi Arabia's presence on the global esports stage?
So, in the short term, I would say our biggest innovation is our innovation in our investment strategy. Many investments done all over the world. This is not new to gaming and esports. You are looking at short-term profit. How, by the end of this year, can I create a profit? How can I innovate, adjust, pivot, so by the end of this year, we can reach whatever we need to reach? What we have done here, and what we're doing with Savvy, and what we're doing with the NDF, National Development Fund, is we're saying, what can we invest in now? What can we do now to create something in 10 years that is not just profitable, but is in a position to become a leader in this as an industry? Not what can we do by the end of this year, but what can we do in 10 years that gets us to that point? If it becomes profitable beforehand, then that's great. But what can we look at as an investment now that can put us in a position in 10 years that is a leadership position? Similar to things that they did with Amazon, focusing on the experience, user experience in the beginning and the investment there rather than the profit generating, so that you get to a point where Amazon now is a part of your daily life. I mean, I don't even think about it now. When I want to order something, I order it on Amazon. How can we do that for gaming and for the gaming industry in our investment portfolio? And then looking to the future, this is an industry that changes on a daily basis. Not a weekly, not a yearly basis, not a 5-year basis, but on a daily basis. You have to adjust to make sure you're keeping the fans, the users there as a game. You're consistently putting out updates, changes, tweaks, games coming out, which other games may die, other games may live, other games last a long time, some last just a few years. How do you stay ahead of the curve? And I wouldn't say this is an innovation, but our strategy and everything we've built here and our portfolio thesis for how do you stay ahead of that curve is very simple. That is the users, that is the community, that is the players. They are the ones at the end of the day that are going to be the ones using the games. They're the players. They're the ones that are going to be playing as the professionals. If we can keep them at the center of what we do, then I know we will always get to the right place in the end. And innovation starts with them, innovation ends with them. And if you can keep them at the center of everything you do, the information, keep your ear to the ground, keep the data focused on them, then you know you'll always end at the same place. I mean, I remember people always ask me, where do you think this industry will be in 10 years? And I remember, I'm sorry to go back to Amazon a lot, but Jeff Bezos was asked in an interview, what do you think will change in the next 10 years? And he said something very interesting to me. He goes, everyone always asks about the change in 10 years, but no one ever asks about something more important. What's not going to change over the next 10 years? And that is the community. And so as long as we can keep them the center of everything we do, in our investment portfolio, in our esports portfolio, in our look at the games, in our data research, then I know we're going to end up at the right place.
To that, Your Royal Highness, I say, game on. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, His Royal Highness Prince Faisal. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.